welcome to the Digital Skills Forum. My name's Julia Adamson and I'm Director of Education at BCS. The Digital Skills Forum is part of the National Centre for Computing Education, a programme that aims to increase the number of pupils in schools and colleges in England studying GCSE and A-level computer science, particularly girls and students in disadvantaged areas. We want to ensure there is a strong pipeline of digital skills. The National Centre provides teachers at every key stage with CPD, resources and support, and it focuses on schools from disadvantaged areas and underrepresented groups in particular. We want every child to have a great quality computing education. But what skills will young people need to be ethical users and creators in the digital world? How can our schools and educators deliver the knowledge and skills to enable them to navigate the ethical challenges? And what can we learn from industry and cyber experts about coping with the ethical challenges of the future? We're all users, creators and consumers of digital technology, experiencing an increasing need to understand our rights and responsibilities in digital spaces. Schools are attempting to embed these skills across the curriculum, but how do institutions ensure teaching staff have the knowledge and understanding to make this possible? The new online safety bill currently being considered by Parliament aims to set out some parameters of digital ethics, but is it robust enough for the challenges of the future? We'll be looking at these and other issues in this lively discussion on ethics in the digital world. I have great pleasure in introducing our first speaker this afternoon, Professor Andy Phippen. Andy is Professor of Digital Rights at Bournemouth University and a visiting professor at the University of Suffolk. He has worked in the IT sector for over 15 years in a consultative capacity on issues of ethical and social responsibility with companies including BT, Google and Facebook. Andy is also a research partner with the UK Safer Internet Centre and is a frequent media commentator on children and the internet. He's particularly interested in the distribution of digital skills across all societal groups and is here with us today to talk about the importance of ethics, digital and cybersecurity education and how these impact on our ability to function in modern society. Andy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Julia. Hello all. I don't have any slides and I realise I haven't included my email address on anything, but if folk want to follow up afterwards, you're very welcome to Google me or contact the BCS and they're welcome to share my email address. I'm going to sort of set the scene a little bit. I mean, it said in my introduction there that it's 15 years. I figured out the other day it's actually closer to 20 because I'm getting on a bit now, and I've been involved and around computing education from all that time, from both the perspective of delivering like hardcore computer science education in universities to working with schools and colleges mainly in the sort of online safeguarding area. But I've constantly seen this tension between what computing education is and should it be just delivered within the computer science curriculum, or should it be incredibly broad? You know, you sort of visit a school, they go, right, we've got our online safety lead, it's the head of IT, and as my dear friend and colleague David Wright from Southwest Grid for Learning is fond of saying, it's a bit like putting drugs awareness in a chemistry class. It's kind of like, well, this is how you make it, so this is how you take it or this is how you take it safely. So one of the things that stands out for me, just to give an example of this tension, is I visit a lot of primary schools, and on more than one occasion, we sort of just got chatting about young people's interests and things, and they said, oh, well, you know, they've got to do their Key Stage 2 English presentation, and they can do it on anything apart from gaming. You go, well, why not gaming? Oh, it's just silly, isn't it? Oh, they're just constantly talking about gaming. It's like, well, that's because they're into it. And we tell them they'll never get a job in gaming. And you go, actually, the UK's got a massive gaming industry. And even if some of them don't end up in gaming, the fact that they're interested in coding because they're playing games and things is incredibly valuable. You know, my daughter's boyfriend taught himself to code at the age of 12 because he wanted to write mods for Minecraft. He's already pre-university got quite the portfolio of software development expertise and things now. So I think sometimes we create these barriers and seem to think that STEM has to go in the cupboard, or that's just for the computer science area, and it really isn't. I mean, on the flip side, I'll go and speak to sort of computer science teachers, or I'll go and visit a university and say, right, so you've got your computer science curriculum. Where do you put your ethics and law in? And they generally sort of go, well, we've got to do it because of professional accreditation, and you know, the students don't really go for it. which I find really quite bizarre, because one of the first things I do if I'm teaching ethics to computer science students is go, right, put your hands up if you get on an aeroplane you've written the software for. I don't wish to worry you too much, but no one ever says they would, which I think demonstrates the fact that, if you are passionate about tech, sometimes you don't want to know about the legislative stuff. But as Julia said, we are an increasingly regulated industry, and that's not going to go anywhere. And as tech pervades across our lives, it's certainly going to get more and more regulated as well. But I think the thing we miss is that those skills and knowledge are life skills. It's not just for the people who end up in STEM careers. I find the separation between sort of cybersecurity knowledge and teaching about online safety quite bizarre, because they're viewed as two completely separate things. Whereas if you've got good cybersecurity knowledge, and unless you are you choose to do a computer science GCSE or A level, the majority of young people, Sharon's going to talk about a completely different model, which is amazing, but the majority of young people won't have had any cybersecurity education since Key Stage 3, since about the age of 13. And then we wonder why ransomware attacks happen because of phishing attacks and things. Well, surely they should have known. Well, why would they if they've never received decent cybersecurity education? And then you'll sort of talk to students, and they'll go, well, I do share my passwords with my partner because we love and trust each other. And you go, what? And so I think there's definitely a need to look at this far more broadly and look at these as life skills, not just skills for people that want to end up as coders. But I think one thing that really brought it home to me, just to finish off, was we recently had a Minister for Digital Culture, Media and Sport appointed, Nadine Dorries. And pretty much as soon as that was announced, I get an email from a journalist going, well, what do you think of that then? Because Nadine Dorries rather famously tweeted 3 or 4 years ago in defense of another politician that anyone in her office can access her laptop. All of her staff have her password so they can access her emails and things, which does demonstrate some rather lax data protection practices there. And it just goes, if we have people who are deciding the law in that area, the STEM knowledge is essential. It's not just for computing students.
Thanks, Andy. That's really interesting. What would you say for this audience was the key takeaway from, what would you want them to take away as the key thing?
I think it's looking at STEM knowledge as something beyond the computer science curriculum. It is something that affects all of us. And cybersecurity specialists always say to me, it's generally the end user or the end point that creates the problem. Now, if we're not giving people knowledge, we can't assume they have knowledge, and I think that's one of the problems we have as a society.
Yeah, definitely. So that functional level life skills for every student, for every person, as part of the everyday in what is now our digital world. Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Well, we'll be back to you in a bit with some questions. And just to the audience, if you can use the chat function, please, to add your comments and questions. We'll be raising those to the panel at the end of their introductory talks. So next, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Kate Arthur, MBA from Kids Code Jeunesse, the founder and CEO. Kate is beaming in from Montreal, but I bet you can't tell. Hey, Kate. Kids Code Jeunesse is a bilingual charity determined to give every Canadian child access to digital skills education. Their hashtag Kids 2030 initiative will educate 1 million children and 50,000 educators on AI, ethics, and the use of technology to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Global Goals by 2030. Kate is going to speak about AI and ethics education for youth and on the importance of supporting the first generation born into a world entirely surrounded by digital technology. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you so much. And unlike Andy, I need slides to keep me on track, or else I do go on a bit. So thank you so much. It's so great to be here with you all today. In Canada, we are in a moment of reconciliation. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize the land that I am currently on. In spirit of peace, friendship, and respect, I recognize that my work and our work at KCJ takes place on traditional Indigenous territories. In Montreal, I am located on unceded territory of the Kenya Kahaka. And as an organization that empowers youth to be positive agents of change, we recognize the importance of reconciliation efforts in Canada and across the world. So with that, I do think I'm new to all of you, and I do think it's important that I give my angle on what I think education is all about, in particular the K-12 education. And the work that we do is really to make sure that we educate our youth to become engaged citizens socially and economically, with an understanding of how to communicate and create in the world around them. And that's really the impetus behind KCJ and the work that we do. Since 2013, in Canada, we've reached over 600,000 youth in classrooms. We've got a very complicated education system here in Canada with no federal leadership, but more provincially. So that's 13 territories and provinces, which each have their independent Ministry of Education. And we really focus on the coding, algorithms and data, artificial intelligence and ethics, and all tying towards, as Julia mentioned, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Also, as Julia mentioned, our kids are the first generation ever to be born into a world surrounded by AI. And in about 2018, I was in a classroom with a teacher who had used Siri as a tool in the classroom, and was asking Siri questions, and Siri was responding and using it for a number of different areas, whether it's what time is it, Siri, to what's the right answer. And I really stepped back and I thought, my gosh, our children are, that the ability to communicate is being used by AI, and they don't have any understanding of how that communication is working and what is happening with their information, and is this information always right, which we know, or many of us know, that AI is not always right, and it takes solid data for predictions to happen. So I'm embarked in this initiative to make sure that youth were included in the development of AI and the understanding of AI, and empowering them with their critical thinking skills. As an organization, we are very aware of the importance of government, industry, and civil society and academia to work towards ethical AI. In Canada, and in Montreal in particular, we launched the International Declaration of Responsible AI, and this quote is from that. And for the first time in human history, it is possible to create autonomous systems capable of performing complex tasks of which natural intelligence alone was thought capable. So we're moving into a world where technology, our youth need to work with technology rather than against it, and understand how it works, which is what our organization focuses on, and we encourage others to. For our youth, and always with that lens of youth, we want them to know where AI is being used, and they use it every day, and it is everywhere, from vision, speech, language, knowledge, recommendations, and search recommendations. So they are constantly feeding these AI systems with their data, which are going into AI systems and then coming out with predictions. In Canada, we focus on the ethical AI development, and I say Canada, we work with different, again, academia and governments, and also on an international level, working with bodies such as UNESCO and UNICEF to enforce the ethical the development of ethical AI. And these are the 10 principal guidelines. And these 10 principal guidelines are guidelines that we also bring into what we teach the youth. So that's well-being, respect for autonomy and solidarity, equity, inclusion, democracy, privacy and intimacy, sustainable development, which is an angle again to the goals, is what we really anchor ourselves on, and prudence and responsibility. So the workshops that we develop bring in these ethical angles to, when a child is building coding a project, are they reflecting on these AI, these ethical AI points? For the youth, again, we want them to know AI is not visible, it's not magic, these algorithms that are being built are not always right, and the training the data is crucial. And we've seen in big tech and in the media a lot of issues around these AI systems not making the right predictions. On the ethical side, the accountability, the biases involved, the privacy and transparency of questions we want these kids to be asking themselves as they're building the content. So what we do and what we encourage our other organizations who are working with youth and schools and school boards here to focus on is get youth to understand how AI works, explore how artificial intelligence deals with dilemmas and situations, and then reflect on how ethical AI will affect their future, whether it's their jobs, their health, the planet, climate change. We have a number of different angles we take, and given that, again, we work with youth who are often on social media and on technology that makes a lot of decisions for them, we want them to understand this preference bubble, and then who is building this technology, and then who's using their data to make decisions. So, what do they like? And then AI makes suggestions. Then we go into this bubble, and they quickly build this bubble, which is right. It is fine as long as they know and understand how that's building and that they have some control around that. So the AI data and predictions, and then adding that ethical angle, is get children to think about, where are you contributing to someone's data and being shaped by their output, and then get them to ask those questions. How right, how fair, and how just is this algorithm system's outcome and impact? Again, making them see themselves as both the builder and the user within this system that they're in. So where to go from here? That's a lot of information in about 6 minutes. We launched with the UNESCO a project called algorithmliteracy.org. I think it's really important that youth understand how algorithms work before they even start to think about the ethical implications, and then bringing those in. So there's a lot of materials free for everyone and anyone in English and in French. And then we also have the Digital 2030 at the challenge, which we get youth from around the world contributing to the global goals using data and understanding the ethical implications around the data that they're putting into systems to work towards making the world a better place. And that's it for me. So thank you. Great to be here, and happy to answer questions as we go along.
Thanks, Kate. Loads of information there and some great signposting. Thank you so much. If there was one takeaway then, just what would you say was the key thing?
One of my favorite questions. It is a collective responsibility to make sure that our youth are understanding, using their critical thinking skills, and engaging in ethical AI. So it's not a government, it's not a company, it is really a collective initiative.
Great, thanks, Kate. Thank you. Thank you so much. And on that note, I'm going to introduce Sharon Cromie. Sharon was appointed as the head teacher of Wycombe High School in 2009, and as a national leader of education in 2013. Alongside her headship role, Sharon is currently employed as an Ofsted inspector, is a member of the Buckinghamshire Schools Forum and Children's Partnership Board, and sits on the National Centre for Computing Education's Advisory Board. Since implementing a revolutionary new computing curriculum at Wycombe High, Sharon is here to walk us through how a well-rounded education in digital skills is helping her students to gain access to vital employment pathways, and how ethics and digital skills operate in the classroom through to everyday life. Sharon, welcome. Lovely to have you here.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me. It's fascinating. I could just listen to Andy and Kate talk forever. I'm taking notes and trying to work out we can make what we do in schools even better. So thank you. So a little bit of context. I'm the head teacher of an all-girls school. We've got 1,320 students, and historically we tried to introduce computer science into our school in line with government guidelines and directions around the national curriculum, GCSE and A-level. And we quickly learned that that was great for the very few girls who were choosing GCSE computer science, and even fewer that were choosing it to A-level. And I know, and Julie will keep me right if I get this wrong, there are 13% of Key Stage 4 cohort in England take up GCSE computing, and of that 13%, 22% are female. And that's exactly what we saw in my school. So even though we were all girls, and in theory set up to be make it all more engaging for girls, we saw a very, very low uptake. I started off my working life as a computer programmer, and it just didn't seem right, particularly in this very fast-paced area where it's clear to everyone that digital skills are almost becoming a prerequisite for any job that anyone does. And in fact, we often talk to our young people in schools that they will end up doing jobs that don't even exist at the moment in an arena that is very, very fastly developing. So we just weren't happy, and we scratched our heads and thought, well, you know, what can we do? We went into partnership with boys' schools to see if that happened. And all that did was confirm the gender stereotyping that sits around computer science. So that made it even worse rather than better. So we stepped back and thought, let's start with the vision and see how we can get things to fit from there. And our vision was quite simply put, that every student in her time, in her 7 years at our school, every single year must learn how to code, utilize computational thinking, understand algorithms, and understand the importance of digital learning to their future careers and their future life, professional and personal. And we then had to work out how we were going to deliver on that. And we are not fully there, because every year we want to improve it. And one of the stumbling blocks initially for us was getting the right staff, because all of this changes so quickly, and to expect 1 or 2 members of school staff to know everything and to keep up to speed with it, whilst at the same time doing the job of a teacher, which is to teach, to assess, to report, to liaise with parents. It was too big of an ask. So we reached out to partners and thought, let's look if there are partners, agencies, companies, universities, anyone that can bring more up-to-date expertise, so that what the students are being exposed to is in real time and feels very, very dynamic. So we removed GCSE computing from our school curriculum. We retained A-level, and we put in place a programme of learning that is age and stage specific, that sort of is a spiralling curriculum. So introduced to the things I've talked about in year 7, and then they are built on in years 8, 9, 10 and 11 using a whole range of partners. So we had to carve out some curriculum time, so it's little and often, and we continue to review that curriculum every year, and it feels like we have to run at 150 miles an hour to keep it current. And, you know, and I've heard what Kate said about AI and ethics, and I'm thinking, oh, we're not doing enough of that. We need to put more of that in. So we supplement it with focus days where we have a deep dive into a particular aspect of digital learning and ethics. And we are 2 and a bit years into this. And of course, longitudinally, it's going to be interesting what happens after 7 years, 10 years, to see what the impact on the young people is. So it's been a real shift. We've strengthened mathematics in the school as well, so that we can keep as many 16, 17 and 18-year-olds engaged in mathematics as we can, recognizing that not everybody wants to do an A-level in maths, but because there's a lot of level 3 courses that really help with that algorithms and computational thinking and looking at those overlaps, and really looking at PSHE and how that can complement all of this with the keeping young people safe, understanding how they keep themselves personally safe, and as Andy talks about, a little bit of the cybersecurity, how they, not just about their own well-being, but how they keep their own personal affairs, and as they move into their careers and are making decisions, how they need to be mindful of all of this. But there's a lot to do in a PSHE curriculum, so it's pretty tightly packed. In terms of Impact, what can I point to already? Increased uptake of A-level computing, which is fantastic. And in a very short period of time, we now have, I think, going back 6-7 years ago, we might have had 2 or 3 students. And this year we have a class of almost 20. So really big impact. 1,320 students all having exposure to coding, computational thinking, algorithms, etc. Increased provision of extracurricular clubs and societies, a real diversity of young people wanting to get involved in sort of engineering, robotics, computing. Sixth formers coming up with superb ideas of what they want to do and how they want to lead it. And really a real and a deeper understanding of how all of this affects them in their careers, whatever their career is. So a bit of a shift. So we're on a journey. We're very passionate about it. It wasn't in the early stages universally popular with parents, even though only about 12 or 15 girls out of a whole of hundreds of Key Stage 4 students ever chose GCSE computer science. But now it's settling and we have all of those hundreds all doing it. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, wow, thanks, Sharon. And I can see some questions coming in already. Just on your journey, I mean, what would you say the biggest sort of lesson that you've learned has been so far? Kind of what would your, what maybe something that was unexpected or something that you've changed significantly since you embarked on it?
It's a good question. I think it continues to be a challenge how we keep it fresh and relevant to every year group and to every student. And we tried to do that on our own initially, and it did not work. So the importance of working with a range of partners, because every child needs to see themselves. We are a very diverse school as well. And engaging with a wider range of partners so that every child can not only see the career, but can see themselves, using these skills and needing to use these skills into the future. So, and finding good partners can be tricky as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Sharon. I'm sure we'll come back to that in a minute. I'm going to start with a couple of questions I can see that have arrived in the chat already. So just to prepare you, Sharon, you might want to open the chat so you can see it as well, because I'm going to come to you on that. And then I've got a more general question, but just to encourage the audience to pop your questions in the chat and we'll raise them to the panel. But there was a clarification point about, do you offer the GCE A-level OCR or AQA in particular, or another alternative BTEC type vocational technical qualifications?
We offer traditional A-level through OCR or AQA. I can't actually remember which one it is at this stage. The rest of it is about exposure, not necessarily qualification aimed. Though by the time we get up to sixth form, our sixth formers are building a digital portfolio, which can be made up of qualifications from a number of different places, not always educational, traditional OCR, AQA, in fact, not at all, not BTECs or A-levels, but perhaps badges or certificates from courses they have done online or through recognised agencies or coding academies, etc.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Eric also asks about the sort of extracurricular computing related activities and what you've got in your school. So if you're able to come in on that, and then also if I can add a cheeky question to that, and then I'll come to Kate and Andy on it, because I'm sure you'll both have views. Kind of to what extent do you believe that the impetus really should be on incorporating these sort of digital ethical skills in the core curriculum, or is it good enough to have this extracurricular alternative? And you may or may not have views around whether the extracurricular is the curriculum. So I'm sure, Sharon, you'll have views around, well, that is the curriculum, because it's maybe not the bit that's formal in a 45-minute, 55-minute lesson. It's just the bit that happens by choice. But it'd be good for you to expand on that, please. And then I'll come to Kate and then Andy on that one.
Okay, so I think it's the types of extracurricular first of all. So we have like Micro Mouse Club, we have Robotics Club, we build these things, we enter into competitions with them. We have external companies coming in to run robotics days using Python, etc. We have other days where they're building other games, but to Andy's point about gaming for younger year groups, that's really engaging, and they learn how to build a computer game themselves, which is fantastic. And then there are computer clubs for different stages where they can go along and try and develop their coding if that's what they want to do. So it's a range and it's expanding. But some of that is at lunchtime, led by a teacher and sixth formers. Sometimes we collapse the curriculum and do a whole day with students coming together and working on teams. So in terms of the ethics side of it, I think we try hard in schools to touch on a lot of this. I think there's probably a very good understanding from a safeguarding perspective around what is ethical and sound practice to keep young people safe. And we talk about that a lot, about how they can keep themselves personally safe. And what we mean by that is that they're not, targeted by inappropriate adults or by inappropriate organizations, and they're not being groomed, etc. We do a little bit of the cybersecurity, as I've said, password strength and not sharing, etc. We talk about artificial intelligence. We've worked with partners about how it's built, what it does. Honestly, do we spend enough time talking about the ethics around that to develop our young people who will be the developers in the future, or the leaders? No, I don't think we do yet. And I think we need to be adjusting our curriculum to reflect that more. And also the extracurric brings all of this to life. So if you sit in a classroom and you talk about it, yes, I think people will learn, they will debate, they will engage, but when they go and do, they see it in real life, and then they can enter competitions or they work in teams, and it makes it real for them and it gives them a deeper understanding. So it's all interrelated.
Thanks, Sharon. Kate?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Sharon has just mentioned. I'm across the pond, so things work slightly differently over here. But I would guess that, or I'm going to assume that if it's not in the curriculum, it's likely not to always get done, which is what it is here in Canada. If it's not in the curriculum, it can't be graded or measured. It will just end up being to those who have the opportunity or chance to join an after school group or a lunchtime group. So really from our standpoint and from my angle, with a lens of artificial intelligence and how this is really part of this fourth industrial revolution, which is disrupting everything that we do and that we've seen before. And I would compare it to the Industrial Revolution, not to be as extreme, it is, because I feel it is, that the youth's jobs that they know today are not those jobs that are going to be in 5-10 years time. And Sharon, I commend the work to bring in partners and having industry also talk, because it can't be done just by academia or a system. You need to have, reflect what is actually happening in the real world, because you're almost building the bike while you're riding it, right? Because it's changing so fast and you're trying to bring all this in. The ethical side is hugely important. We're having technology make decisions on whether it should, turn left or turn right, and we need kids to be using their critical thinking skills on how these decisions are being made, because they're decisions that are being taken away from them and being put into the hands of technology and AI systems, and the data that is being built in that being taken into those, and those algorithms that are being built by, at the moment, mainly white guys, who are educated, and we're not building in that diversity. And if we don't have the diversity in those who are building the technology and also in those who are using it, then we've got systems that are making decisions that just don't reflect the ethical standards that, in terms of, United Nations, that they're not. So I think we have a huge responsibility in bringing this into the curriculum and making sure that our youth have the understanding of how all of this works.
Thanks, Kate. Andy, have you got anything to add on that?
I'm going to be annoyingly academic and say yes. I think both are equally important. It would be, we've talked a lot about critical thinking, which has got, it doesn't have to be grounded in computing at all, and there's an awful lot you can do around critical thinking that is tech based. Equally, you can look at tech based stuff across the curriculum. I mean, one thing I tend to do quite a lot is just try and embed whatever I'm talking about in current affairs. So 2 weeks ago Facebook went down for a day, and WhatsApp went down for a day, and Instagram went down for a day. That's an immediate talking point that pretty much every young person in the country has an opinion on, because while obviously Facebook's full of old people, they're still using Instagram and things like that. Something like the HGV driver shortage at the moment, it's kind of like, well, should we be encouraging people to get HGV licenses? Probably not, because in 10 years, automated trucks are going to be on the roads and things as well. So you can get some really interesting discussion going across the curriculum. But, I think what Sharon's doing is amazing. And I think it demonstrates the importance and the value of looking at this as a group of life skills, rather than just, oh, okay, so you want to work in the software industry? Well, do A-level computer science then, because if you look at national guidance, it can be a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I don't know if anyone's read the DFE guidance on teaching online safety from cover to cover, like I certainly have. But it's kind of depressing, because it's saying stuff like, oh, if it's a sensitive topic, get someone external in to do it, which completely contradicts what young people are saying, that they want people in the school that they can talk to about these sorts of things as well. So I think what Sharon's done is brave and to be greatly admired, because it works within the restrictions of the curriculum framework, but it does do some fantastic things as well, and recognizes that computing skills are not just for computer scientists. You look at fundamental aspects around online safety, and if you know how to protect your assets, or you've got good two-factor authentication in your cloud store, someone's less likely to go into it and nick the images you've got there and then use them to abuse you in the future. These are things that certainly don't just affect computer scientists.
Thanks, Andy. Absolutely. And I think, getting that pipeline through into secondary education, so that primary education gives that really strong, well-rounded opportunity for young people to learn the knowledge, to consider it, to debate and discuss, and to put it into practice in the doing, in a range of inspirational activities. Then imagine what we'll be capable of then if we can build on that. So I think the next few years can be really exciting as we see that develop.
I think that's a really good point. Just to jump in and interrupt, the primary setting can really lay the foundations here. First of all, you've got an opportunity to be more cross-curricular because you're less fixed, but also you've got a huge amount of young people of that age who are massively passionate about this stuff. So it's like, harness that passion and talk to them about opportunities for careers, and talk to them about how this could be something they could do in the future and similar, rather than telling them to, oh, you'll never be an influencer. Like, well, yes, most people won't be an influencer, but having a critical conversation around why that is the case. And there are successful influencers, but lots of people aren't, because people will only watch so so to have those critical conversations at an early age is it's fantastic. And I still thoroughly enjoy visiting a primary school and going into lunchtime with the young people, still asking questions about technology and still asking questions about gaming and careers and things. It's fantastic. And I think it's a really, really good point that this is something that should start in primary setting.
I remember distinctly, Andy, years ago, you saying to me about just because somewhere there's a rule that Facebook rely on around over 13 being the age of consent, that that's not to say that we can't have that conversation with very young children who are who will be accessing these services, and it's not about the age, is it? It's about stage and development and understanding.
Well, even that discussion is a really interesting one with young people, because I'll be told, we don't talk about social media, they shouldn't be on it. And you go, why is that then? Because it's illegal. We go, no, it's not. It's illegal for a company to collect data on a 12-year-old. It's not illegal for a 12-year-old to be on social media. But then you can start to have interesting conversations with young people about, why do you think these laws exist, or why do you think these rules exist, rather than just going, you shouldn't be on it, shut up, we're not going to talk about it. You know, I can remember being told by a young lady in a school in Liverpool once, it's a bit like saying you don't do sex ed until after the age of 16 because that's age of consent. You know, it's ridiculous. You lay the foundations and you provide an environment where they do apply critical thinking skills and they are confident they can ask questions and get answers, rather than asking questions and going, you shouldn't do it, you know.
Definitely, that stuck with me for a long time, and it's really interesting going through it as a parent of 3 girls of that sort of age, you know, 11 and up, and how they replay that back to me when I say switch your phone off, get off, no, you're not having Snapchat, and they say, yeah, but I think you said that if I was at the right developmental stage, then and that's a really interesting debate as a parent.
So is that my fault then?
So thanks for that.
That's all right, no worries.
So I don't know if we've got any more questions. I've got another one, so I'm going to selfishly take it. So, you know, we've all recognised, I think, and we've agreed that ethical implications of failing to deliver adequately a digital education to young people is unthinkable, isn't it? So, you know, what could be the most drastic, far-reaching negative impact on young people's livelihoods and their quality of life if we don't get this balance right? I don't know who wants to start us off on that. Sharon, should I come to you first, and then we'll go Kate and Andy?
Can you hear me? Yes, I think I've unmuted. Well, I'm going to reflect on that question in my own context. And a lot of what we do every single day is about inclusion and equality. And that is, you know, that's right and proper. It really is what gets most school teachers out of bed and into school every single day, is the moral imperative to offer a great education to every child, irrespective of their socioeconomic background, you know, religions, race, sexual orientation, all of those, you know, protected characteristics. We try to make sure we're catering for everything. And if we do not provide the appropriate digital curriculum for our young people, we are going to widen the gaps that already exist in society. Because those who are fortunate enough to be able to go to schools that provide it, or who have parents who can purchase it for them through, you know, online or other partners, will have an extraordinary advantage when it comes to the workplace and their futures. So this isn't a nice to have. This is really about a fundamental right and a cultural shift that's needed.
Sharon, really powerful words. Kate?
Yeah, and to build on that with the digital divide, and again with artificial intelligence, and that gap, it will just continue widening. I think individually, if we're not bringing the ethical aspect into youth education, that they are then just consumers with no control or power. Collectively, I think if we're not building in the ethical aspect into education, then we are not doing service to our youth and to society, really, on building technology that is sustainable and equitable for society, that is able to take on challenges, because this is, you know, again, artificial intelligence is almighty powerful, and we have decisions to, as human beings, to use that for good or not, and it's not the technology that makes that decision. And I think that we need to, as society, to bring in the ethical implications on the building of that technology.
Thanks, Kate. And Andy?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. You know, at all levels, there's a high risk. I mean, in terms of, you know, social and personal issues, to whether UK PLC will be able to fully exploit the potential of these sorts of things. You know, it's in the online safety bill consultation, you know, which is saying that companies have to place greater effort into risk assessment and things. One of the questions is, will this make the UK more competitive? Well, no, it probably won't, because companies will just move to where there's less regulation and things. So to be aware of it, how to work with that in an effective way is really, really important. But just picking up on Neil's point in the chat there about presenting ethical education in a positive light, I completely agree. And I think one of the challenges we have in this area is the media narrative is constantly negative. So you won't have, most of the time kids are using technology successfully and it's helping them develop STEM skills. It's like child has been groomed, or I think there was a statistic a while ago from the NSPCC, grooming cases have gone up 70% in the last 3 years. Well, they would have done. The law didn't exist 4 years ago. So a better headline would be grooming laws are working. So, one of the things that I do when I've been into schools and things in the past to talk about the IT sector is go, well, Hollywood, movies, music. Well, the gaming industry is worth 4 times that. Or let's look at how much a footballer earns. Now let's look at how much Steve Jobs earned. And just things in terms of, there's a lot of really good stuff financially, but there's a lot of good stuff as well, in terms of just generally the value of having computing knowledge. I think Bill Gates rather famously said once, don't be mean to the nerdy kids at school, they'll be your boss in 10 years time, which I thought was an amusing comment to make, but equally we want these nerdy kids to understand the ethical implications of what they're doing as well.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks everyone. Thank you so much for your time, Kate, Sharon and Andy, and also to the audience for joining us today. I just wanted to finish off by sort of saying that the National Centre is here to try and address some of those challenges, to support schools in a holistic programme of support and development for every key stage from primary through to A level. We've got a vision that every child has a world-leading computing education, and we want to equip our teachers and empower them with the confidence, the skills and the knowledge to be able to deliver an exciting and supportive computing curriculum for everyone. So thanks again everyone for joining us, and I really hope you enjoyed this afternoon. Thank you now. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.